This recording is going to be what a cross by fire actually stands for. Uh, I was involved in organized crime before I was saved. My family never went to church. So when I was a little kid, my brother and myself were sent to a Baptist Sunday school a few times. So that was my only exposure to church and what church is about. So I grew up a typical uh, immoral youth. Joined the Navy, bought a Porsche. Was enjoying the fast life, driving around a Porsche. Um, I've been all over places. I was been on French Riviera, gambled in Monte Carlo, watched bullfights in Spain. I've been to Hong Kong and in Japan. I visited the Nagasaki and the museum from the atomic bombs. So I've been all around. Spent time in Chicago. I was involved with the Chicago Mafia when we were smuggling drugs. But a cross by fire is a promise I made to God, and it starts out when we were. I was involved. I helped build a smuggling thing. We were smuggling drugs, and I was responsible for the American side of the border, bringing them into the border and distributing our drugs went across the United States. And we were making millions. We built it up from nothing. Started when I with my red Porsche and my partner Alberto Cecilia de Falcon was his name. He was featured in the Netflix series Narco Mexico. So starting in episode 2, he shows up in episode 2 and other episodes along there. We controlled the a lot of the drug traffic across the California border, uh, mainly from Tijuana, Mexicali. Uh, we had a capacity when I left of tons. It was tankers, asphalt tankers, Marshall Trucking Company, and we had a capacity of tons per week. So we were making millions, smuggling in the drugs, and I was responsible for them being sold and distributed across the United States. But what a cross by fire stands for is the deal I made. I was out on my ranch. I had a ranch out east of San Diego, up in the hills, um, and it was kind of an unusual situation because normally we always partied and smoked dope. We would take LSD Kool-Aid and smoke hashish in a water pipe, and of course the pot was already always there. And snorting cocaine, I had a habit of snorting cocaine. My partner nicknamed me Shovel Nose because we got our cocaine in pure from Peru, and I was part of the party that was supposed to go to Europe to make a new connection for the heroin over there instead of the Mexican brown heroin. But I was out on the my property of the ranch house. It was a pretty good sized ranch house. I had a Porsche to drive. I had a custom car. And what happened, it was one day out in the ranch house. um, didn't know what Christians really were. Didn't know what a Christian really was. But I believed there had to be a God. This world was a cruel joke, I thought, on man. Get what you can, and that's all there is to life. When you die, you die. But I thought there had to be a God that made all this, but didn't know anything about him. Didn't know who he was. I'd heard the name Jesus. Um, Nobody had witnessed to me. They probably had witnessed to me or preached to me, but I didn't know it at the time. And one day, I was just kind of miserable. Nobody was there. I was at the ranch house by myself, and just kind of didn't want to. I Lots of stuff I could have done. Had all the money I needed, more money than most people. The drugs we used was more than most people could ever afford. Um, when I started out, I was selling to the San Diego Hells Angels, so I wasn't afraid of much people, and So when I was out there that day, I just kind of had nothing except the only thing I could think of was who is this God that made this world? Who is God? So I was out there. We had big boulders around. It was up in the hills east, San Diego, east of San Diego, and standing on a boulder, looking out across toward the west, and you could barely make out the Pacific Ocean on the horizon there from our ranch up in the hills, and there was a lake down there. And I was looking out there, and I was thinking I couldn't think of anything I wanted to do. Like I said, I've been on the French Riviera up and down. I've gambled in Monte Carlo. I've been to bullfights in Spain. Um, been around a good part of the world and seen a lot of different stuff, but I really couldn't think of anything I wanted to do or buy or whatever. We had the money. I had a Porsche. And I was looking up and I said, well, who are you, God? And I started thinking that was the only thing I wanted to know. Who really made this? Who is God? What is God? And who made this world anyway? I couldn't think of, I didn't know anything about him, but I believed he was real. I believed there was a God, he was real. So as I was standing on that rock, I was thinking, I just want to know who God is. All right? I just want to know something about God. Um, I don't know him, don't know who he could be. So I was just thinking the more I thought about it, the more it became the one thing I wanted to know, the important thing I wanted to know. Who is God? And what is he like? And why did he make this world? Why are people like they are? And, you know, basically, who is he and why did he make the world? And I was blaming him for making it the way it was. And I started calling it out. I was challenging God. Who are you? And what do you want? You know, what do you want from mankind? And why did you make us? And as I was challenging him, I was got kind of personal about it, you know. And I said, okay, you know, I know who I am. And I know I'm the opposite. If you're a God, you must be good. But I'm the opposite. I know all the things I've done. It was organized crime involved with organized crime from the Chicago Mafia and the Mexican Mafia smuggling drugs. And I know I'm the opposite of you. I said I make no excuses. I know who I am. I know everything I've done. I've broken every law. Figured I've broken all his commandments and stuff. Um, but it was always my choice. Everything I did, it was like I realized I carried a gun all the time, and everything I did was my choice. It was like act first, you know, take the first shot. Don't hesitate. Everything I did was I knew I was responsible for. I wasn't blaming nobody for what I became. But I wanted to know why he was so good, because this world is so corrupt. And as I was standing out there, I said, "You could, if you just tell me who you are, you can kill me now. I really don't care." It was nothing I wanted to do, nothing I wanted to see, nothing I wanted to accomplish. I got rich, but that didn't satisfy me. I didn't feel anything. It was like having the money or the wealth or whatever. It didn't mean anything to me. So I was challenging God to tell me who He was. I said, if you want to kill me, go ahead. I know what I am. I know what I've become, and it's my fault. It's always my choice and my decisions. And I got nothing. And first, I want to say that when I was up there talking to him, standing on that boulder looking out west, behind me there was, you know, the house, the ranch house, with a guest house. It was like driveway separated the house, main house and guest house, and another building for animals out front and a big oak tree. Well, when I said, God, when I finally said, you could, that's it, you can kill me, I don't care. Just tell me first. And it was nothing. And I thought, I am so bad that actually there is a God. I'm sure there's got to be a God, but he won't have anything to do with me. I am so evil that he won't even tell me who I am. It just like kind of broke me. I'm that bad. I am so evil that God won't even tell me who he is. And at that point, when I just like kind of gave up, I just cried out the name Jesus. I don't know why. It just, I blurted it out. It just came up out of me, Jesus. And when I said that name, it was like the heavens opened and there was a presence that came just all around me. It was like I knew somebody was there. I was talking to somebody. And at that point, I just broke down. I just said, I don't know who you are, but I don't want, wish I could have a second chance at life. I don't want to be this person. I don't want to be who I am. It was just, I just poured out my heart to him. It was like I knew who I was. I knew what I was. I was bad. I was evil. I'd broken all these laws and commands. And if I could ever have been someone else, if I had grown up different, but it was my fault that I became like I am. And I said, if there was some way you could give me a second chance at life, a second chance to be someone else. And then I stopped and I said, I made an agreement with him. If you can prove to me that the Bible is true, Jesus is the Son of God, he's coming back to this earth, and you're going to destroy this earth by fire in the end. And I thought, when did I ever hear that? I could not remember the time when that was told to me. I mean, I'd gone to church as a little kid a couple times to a Sunday school, but I could not remember where I'd ever heard that. And I was asking God if you could prove to me the Bible is true, Jesus, the Son of God, he's coming back to earth, and you're going to destroy this earth by fire in the end. I thought, and behind me there was this building that held chicken shed or animals. There was no wire. No, it wasn't like a regular chicken shed. It was a 4x4 frame building. It was probably 16 feet long and 8 feet wide. And the frame was 4x4, rough cut 4x4s. And there was no wire, but these thin wooden slats was what covered the whole building. They were spaced about an inch apart, and so you could see right through the building. In fact, we had a garden hose running through it between the slats. And it was at the foot of a hill, and we'd used the hill to dig a cave. And we dug into the cave and shored it up and covered it with bushes and stuff. And it would hold like a ton of drugs. It was a temporary stash point that was all disguised and covered up. You had to open up the hatch and go down into it. Um, it was right behind the building, this place where we'd had the cave dug out, where we could hold, stash about a ton of drugs if we needed to. Safe place. But when I was standing on that rock, and I said, if you can prove to me, and I thought about that building behind me, I said, if you could burn a cross in that building in a way no man could do it, impossible for man to duplicate. And I thought there was, right next to the building, there was this big oak tree. And underneath the oak tree was an old buckboard. The guy who owned the buckboard wouldn't let me have it. I wanted that buckboard. We were leasing the property. I said, burn the buckboard to the ground and put another cross in the building that I know it was you. And it was like, if you could do that, I believe I'll serve you the rest of my life if you give me another chance at life. And it was like, after I made that agreement, I'll serve you the rest of my life if you can prove to me the Bible's true and Jesus is coming back. Burn that cross, burn up the buckboard, and put another cross in there. And it was like that presence that was around me, somebody was listening to me, slowly closed, like is like the heavens closed up. He went away, and it was like, but I had such peace. You know, I had confessed who I was, poured out my heart to him, and then I had peace, and the presence just lifted. It's like the heavens closed up. I went back in the house and put on an album and kicked back to listen to it and fell asleep, sound asleep. Well, it was a while after that. It was a good while after that that fires swept through from Mexico to almost Bakersfield, swept through Southern California in the hills, out in the brush in the hills. And oh, I said, I want to see a fire. I challenged him to burn a cross in that building in the way Nomad could. I said, if I want to see the biggest fire I've ever seen. Well, it was the biggest fire I'd ever seen. 185,000 acres were on fire at one time. There was like 5 different fires going all at once, all in those areas out in the hills and the brush and stuff. And the area where we lived, the fire burned through twice. And everybody evacuated. You know, the fires were coming. We evacuated. I went down to Mexico, living with Albert. He was called the Falcon, Albert Cecilia the Falcon. Um, yeah, he had quite a reputation in Mexico. I spent a lot of time in Mexico with him, with Albert. And I went down there during the fire. When we came back up, and as we're driving into the property. Now the hill where we dug the cave hid the property from the road, the county road. You couldn't see where the house was. You couldn't see a house or there was anything there. There was just kind of a driveway that went in and went around this big hill and stuff. And as we pulled in from the driving up to the house, everything was burnt black. The hills, the brush, everything. You could see the fire had swept through there. Everything was burnt down, and it was just everything was black from the fire. But as we went around that hill and driving up toward the grounds around it was totally intact, untouched by the fire. Everything was normal, just like we'd left it. The house, the tree, the buildings, except the driveway to the house separated the house from the guest house. It was a guest house and carport. It burned to the ground. It was just a pile of charcoal and melted copper plumbing pipe and stuff 10 feet from the main house. The guest house and carport was completely burned to the ground. But the main house with the flowers, bushes, everything's in bloom was perfectly untouched by the fire, perfectly untouched. Everything looked normal. Even plastic visqueen that was 10 feet from the guest house that burned completely to the ground was like not even singed, no heat, no effect at all from the fire. And I was just like kind of shocked. And then one of the guys that worked for me got there and he'd been walking around and he walked up to me. He was like, eyes great big and stuff. He goes, I don't know what this is. You've got to see it. It's like a sign from God. And he looked out at the animal shelter that at the base of the hill. And it was just like I got these chills all over. I walked out there to the base of the hill and I looked up. I walked between the oak tree and the house, but I was looking at the house. And I walked up to walk around behind it, and our cave was burnt out. It was a big black hole in the ground. It just totally burned out. All the wood we had showing it up, and it was like a big black hole in the ground. Everything was burnt black, but I looked up at the back of the building, right in the middle of this 16-foot span. The 4x4s were missing in the shape of a cross. The 4x4s formed a hole, the shape of a cross, almost maybe 5 feet high and 3 feet wide. The 4x4s just burned through, and these thin wooden slats that went around the building were untouched, not scorched, singed, or anything. Everything was perfectly normal, except that the 4x4 frame was gone. It was a hole the shape of a cross. I was stunned. I didn't know what to do. And I started to walk back, and I was right next to that oak tree with where the buckboard had been. And the buckboard was nothing but a pile of ashes and rusted metal. And my head swung right to the corner of the building, and the 4x4s were gone. And it's like small, like a X or plus sign in the corner where the frame was. The 4x4s were missing, formed a hole, the shape of an X marking the spot, or cross or a plus sign marking the spot. And I was stunned. I didn't know what to do. I had no idea how to keep my promise to God. I had made a promise. I said, if you can do that in a way no man could possibly do it, impossible for man, then I'll serve you the rest of my life. But you have to take me to a place where they can teach me. I had no idea what to do. But I had part of my agreement. I will serve you the rest of my life, but you have to take me someplace where they can teach me what to do. And I was just stunned. I stumbled back to my Porsche. I was driving the Porsche that day, and I didn't know what to do. And it was a while after that that he was, because I had this idea of having a cheetah breeding ranch. I bought the property, and it was buying the property. I had a meeting with an attorney in Century City and it was a while after that. The Lord just supernaturally made me go to L.A. from San Diego. I drove up there, and the story was I was still quite the character. Uh, but he took me to this little street mission. People as a girl, handed me a tract on the street. It was during the Jesus movement. And she said, Jesus is coming back to earth. And it was like, yeah, I know, leave me alone. And something grabbed me, spun me back around, and she walked back up to me and handed me the tract and started telling me about Jesus. And I couldn't say a word. I just stood there, and it was like unable to even speak. And then when she left, she turned and walked off. I had this tract in my hand so I drove over to the place, and they witnessed to me and told me, and that was the place. It was a little street mission during the Jesus Revolution, Jesus movement. There was this little street mission where they were passing out tracts and witnessed this young guys, young people talking about Jesus. Jesus is coming back. And it was like, and that's where I got saved. And when I got saved, I had contracts out to kill. There was a contract from the Chicago Mafia to kill me. I was under federal indictment at the time, and being the partner, I was partners with Albert, the Falcon. We had a 60-40 split. He got the 60, I got the 40. I handled all the customers, which was, one of them had been Hell's Angels. And at that little street mission, they preached the gospel to me, and I knew I had made a promise to God. I said, you prove to me the Bible's true, and Jesus is coming back, and I will serve you wherever you send me, whatever I have to do. And I was there. I got saved, and of course I didn't know what I was going to do at first. It was like I was like, oh no, reality started setting in. And they preached the gospel. I got saved, and I was sitting there with the guy reading the Bible, and he says, wouldn't you like to lay down your life and serve the Lord? And that's what I promised God I would do. And he'd kept his end of the bargain. God was faithful to the agreement, kept his end of the bargain. He had done the impossible for me, but I didn't know what to do. I didn't know how I was going to do anything, how I was going to keep my promise. But when he asked me, wouldn't you like to lay down your life and just serve the Lord? It was like, yes, but you don't know who I am. And he said, well, stick around, talk to the pastor and see if you can. And I told the pastor of the church, you probably don't want me here because somebody's probably going to come looking to kill me. I would endanger this whole place, be staying here. And he goes, can you trust God to take care of your problems? Well, I said, he's the only one I could trust. I didn't trust anybody. That's why I packed a gun all the time. I didn't trust anybody. I didn't believe anybody. Except now I knew I could trust God. It was that He can do anything He wants to. Um, they was the only one I could trust is God. So he said, "Fine, you can stay here." So I just moved in with nothing but the clothes on my back. Um, and I found out, as I knew there would be, contract out to. I knew there would be contracts to kill me. I knew the uh, drug play. We built a cartel there in Mexico, making millions. I walked away knowing everything about the operations, everything how they operated. They're not going to leave me alive. They couldn't possibly. When I was there with them, if anybody tried to leave knowing our things, they'd had to be taken care of. So I knew they had to kill me, but I knew I was saved, and I knew I had the promise of heaven. It was like I figured it's like they're going to have to kill me. They can't leave me alive, but I go to heaven. I knew it was true. I started reading the Bible and learning about God and learning those things about Him, and I knew the Bible was true. I knew Jesus Christ was real. He was the Son of God. And the more I learned, the more I was convinced that now I am saved and I'm going to go to heaven. They might kill me, but that's okay. It's if they kill me, I go to heaven. If they don't, then I serve God and go to heaven. But I knew it was real. I knew it was true. Everything that the Bible talks about is true. It's not about religion. It's about coming to know Jesus and coming to know God. He had done the supernatural for me and proved to me that it was true, that everything the Bible talks about is true. And so I just laid down my life and started serving God. And I actually went back out on the street with the people after a while. They wouldn't let me at first because I had to start reading and I had to learn stuff about the Bible. I had to learn who God was. But then I started going back out on the streets along with them and passing out tracts and witnessing, telling people about Jesus. But I trying to tell people I know it's true. God proved it to me, and trying to get people to listen. And it was frustrating sometimes because I absolutely knew it was true. God had proved to me with supernatural signs that could not be denied when He'd burned out the beams and not touched fire had not touched any other thing except where He was giving me signs to prove to me that the Bible's true and Jesus is true and He's coming back to earth. And that was like science by fire, biggest fire I've ever seen, 185,000 acres on fire at one time. Um, only God could do that. Only God could do that. Uh, so that was it. I just trusted Him and I just stayed and laid down my life. That was years ago. And for whatever reason and how He worked it out, I was under federal indictment for smuggling, and they convicted me, sentenced me to federal prison. The U.S. Court of Appeals reversed the verdict, turned me loose, acquitted me. If they tried to come and kill me, I don't know because I never saw anybody. There was never any attempts on my life. I just kept reading the Bible and praying and witnessing to people and telling people Jesus is coming back. I just kept doing what God had for me to do, and here I am today. Nothing ever happened. So I trusted God, and He did take care of it. I don't know how. I have no idea how He took care of it. But I know God is able. He is able to do above, farther, more than we could ever think or ask. that Jesus Christ is the Son of God, is God, and He will take care of us, that He will make things. He can do the impossible. He proved to me before I even got saved that He could do the impossible. And I just thank God for my salvation. I thank God that He is awesome. And that is the meaning of a cross by fire. He burned a cross into a building by fire, making a hole the shape of a cross. Charred stubs of 4x4 framed the hole. And that's why my testimony is a cross by fire, the impossible cross by fire that God did for me to prove to me who I was, I was evil. I didn't have to clean up my life. I didn't have to do anything good to get saved. I just had to believe Him, and He proved Himself to me that the Bible's true, and He is God, and He can do anything. He can do all things. So, whoever hears this testimony, I hope you will accept Jesus Christ as the Lord of your life and give your life to Him, because He can do all things, and He is love. In Jesus' name, He showed me that He is love. And my whole story is in a book called A Cross by Fire. That's the whole testimony, the whole story. So that's why these recordings are from the book called A Cross by Fire. Thank you.